Welcome to this edition of Rising Stars at BTVI. Now helping SME startups deal with their back-end needs like the cumbersome accounting, the taxation, the reporting, the compliance is what our Rising Stars today are into. Themis Consulting is in the house. They have more than 450 clients, I've been told. And it seems to have come a long way since they began operations back in 2012. In the studio, we have Mihir, Lunia, the co-founder, and Zoeb, Bulsara, as COO at Themis Consulting. Both of them joining us today. Great to have you with us. Mihir, do tell me. You know, I had a recent conversation on a flight that I was taking recently. Someone who was working in the SME, MSME, funding space. Sure, and his question to me is that you meet a lot of these people. Yeah. Why don't you tell me? I've been working in this space for 2 years. Yeah. He's already working for a company that's funding them. Right. And he says, how safe is this? Because I have no idea.
Sure, absolutely.
What is the perception?
Absolutely. So there's actually a lot of questions around data security, which is, I mean, especially in India, right? And you've got to be very careful with respect to who you trust.
Yes.
Thankfully, we haven't had an issue. I mean, obviously, clients are legally covered with an NDA and agreements and whatnot.
Yes.
But we've got Amazon servers, so it's pretty world class. We've obviously got firewalls that pretend that protect anyone's data. And although we're working across 18, 19 sectors, right?
Right.
So you end up having competitors' data, I guess.
No, but inherent risks in being able to lend to this kind of space right now.
Sure.
This is still, to a large extent, uncharted territory, right?
Sure,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, to a certain extent, if you kind of look at the way things are structured, you typically go to a CA firm or build in-house capabilities, right? The kind of where we kind of fit in is. Today, a CA firm isn't really thinking too much about the customer experience. It's more about just doing your accounting. It's not really about providing value beyond the standpoint. And obviously, building an in-house team is just difficult and it's strenuous, and it costs a lot of money. So we kind of fit in the middle of that mix.
Correct. So the idea over here is that you want to help these SMEs to concentrate on their core businesses while you take care of all the back-end work, right?
Correct.
And there are all these things to look into, whether it's compliance, taxation, accounting, all of that. This is not particularly what they might be well versed with. Yeah. So at what level of domain knowledge do you need to have because of the kind of spaces that you're working in? That's what I want to understand as well. There is food processing, I understand. You're in that sector. There's e-commerce, obviously. There's education, healthcare, retail spaces as well. So you need to have a certain understanding of all these spaces to be able to give them the kind of advice they would seek.
Yeah, so we have in-house experts, chartered accountants, people who have been in these businesses for a very long time. So we have in-house experts who know these verticals across. More so, they are process-driven guys. So they know exactly what process follows after each one. So to take care of a healthcare or wellness or manufacturing process is fairly easy to us.
Right. So when you started in 2012, what was the thought then?
Absolutely.
How did you see this as a need gap at that point in time?
Absolutely.
And how has it evolved? How has the business evolved since then?
Sure. So at that point, it was majorly, I mean, late 2011, early 2012, there was just a surge of entrepreneurial energy, right, in India. So everyone, is running a business. And obviously at that point, friends, family were focusing on growing their business. They weren't really thinking about their back-end operations. So it just, with all good things, it started off just through our networks, and we were helping our first, friends and family.
Sure.
And through that, it kind of evolved where we said, okay, there's a real problem that we're solving for these guys. How do startups run it? How do SMEs run it? How do international companies run it? So through that process, we were really lucky. We had a chance to work with companies like Pepperfry, Boku, Nykaa, Haptic more recently.
Sure.
So these are established startups, companies that are doing really, really well.
Correct.
And being in a country like India, you can't ignore the SME space, right?
So at which point in time do they really require the services of an outfit like yours?
So absolutely. So I think for us as a business, it's not about accounting and finance as much as it is about our values, which is helping entrepreneurs grow. Right? Accounting and finance is just how we do it.
Right.
So whether you're at a startup stage where you're just starting your business, or you're at a growth stage where you've got to X level, but your vendors are moving to technology, your customers are moving to technology, you need to kind of streamline those processes.
Right.
We kind of obviously come in from a consulting perspective as well as an operational perspective.
Sure. So when you started, again, like going back to 2012, what was the infrastructure, the kind of space that you had, the people that you had on board, and how have you expanded since then? What have you added? And I imagine that all these sectors that I'm looking at weren't spaces that you decided to get into right up front, right? So you've gone on incrementally.
Absolutely. So when we started out in 2011, 2012, what we did is we worked out of a co-founder's shared space. Okay, we were a bunch of 10 guys, you know, with a big dream with us. And presently, right now, we are 80 strong across 4 cities in India.
Okay.
Okay, and the plan is to...
I know of Mumbai and Bangalore.
Correct. We are there in Hyderabad and Coimbatore as well.
Right. So these are good hubs to be in right now.
Absolutely. Hyderabad, a big growing hub. Coimbatore, a huge textile.
Yes.
Good hub for us. The advantage that we have is the market that we see right now is extremely fragmented and not in its place.
Right.
What we want to do is we want to get in, make sure that the processes are correct. Okay, because right now if you want to have quality services for your back-end operations, either it is way too expensive, all right, or the people actually do not have the need to go out. So what we want to do is we want to target every single customer and ensure that Themis is out there.
It seems like a good place to be in from the possibilities that exist right now. But funding is where the basic problem for any startup today, SME or otherwise, stands. Do you have any role to play over there? Because I understand that you had something going, right? You went the social media route to help some of your clients raise funds. How did that go? This was 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was actually very cool. We got some coverage out for the first time. It was essentially, I mean, the way we've built the company is pretty simple, right? We've gone to a lot of angel funds, we've gone to a lot of VCs and said, hey, listen, you know, you need someone reliable to run these operations for your portfolio. You don't necessarily want to spend too much money on hiring the big four. CAs don't really think about reports in a particular manner. You know, we've been there, we've done that. So we kind of hustled our way into getting those relationships, right? So we work with anyone from you know, from a Norwest, you know, their portfolio companies down to a K or Bloom, right? Since we had those relationships in place, we did a get funded program online where, you know, users had to tweet out a few things, put things out on social media, send us their decks, and, you know, we obviously send out connecting emails. But this is not something we do as a business. It's something, as I mentioned, right? It ties into our values, our values of helping entrepreneurs grow.
Helping entrepreneurs is one level, but you're also expanding your own market in the process.
In a way, right?
Your clientele is going to rise.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess it's easier to market funding than it is accounting and finance services. So it's definitely, that was the rationale behind it.
So what are the initial questions that a potential client is going to ask you to be able to kind of get on board? Obviously, they want to know what from you. What is the level of expertise they're expecting? What are the questions really that they ask you?
So first of all, they do ask us whether we are present in that space, whether we have done accounting compliances in that sector. But what we at Themis have done is we have streamlined this entire process. What we do is we send out the questionnaire to the investor, okay, or to the business head, and ask them to reply to the questionnaire itself.
Right.
So what we want at Themis is we want this entire process to be process driven. What has been happening time and again with finance and compliance is, as Mihir mentioned rightly, it's too people driven. We want to change this and make it process driven.
Is that a mindset change that really requires a lot of effort? Because obviously, like you said, you're bringing in expertise, right? You're looking after back-end operations. Now, that is a facet of the business that perhaps they haven't really sorted out in their heads.
Yeah, yes and no to a certain extent, right? I mean, the typical Indian businessman really thinks about his accounting a lot. It's just a function of prioritizing what is most important. Right? The idea, you know, behind the company and the value in terms of questions that they ask us is understanding how much time it's going to free up of theirs so that they can focus on other activities, and we kind of run these activities for them. The idea wasn't to run this as an outsourced function. We actually embed our team into their office and work as their team and kind of grow with them. So
how long does that process last, Mihir? How long are you with them? This is obviously a certain amount of hand-holding that you're doing, right?
Absolutely.
So what is typically an average period that you're going to do that?
So I would say, you know, for the first 2 years of a company, we run the entire function. I mean, right from writing your books to filing your taxes and sitting on reports with customers. But over time, that changes. People do require an in-house capability where we kind of change our roles into a virtual CFO, right? And these are problems that we encountered along the way.
Right.
And we discovered we need to add service lines.
You're saying virtual CFO. So
Sure.
at that point in time, the embedded nature is removed?
It kind of removes, and it becomes a shared resource model,
Right.
where they work on multiple clients.
And what is the
through
typical time period in which this happens?
I would say anywhere 2 years and plus, just to generalize.
Right.
Because we do have, the way we've structured the team is every client gets access to a 3-layer team, right? Someone who's taking care of their day-to-day work, a chartered accountant who is their point of contact,
Sure.
and the head of delivery. So if you're fundraising, if you're, how to structure your company, how to route the money into your organization, if you need that kind of advisory services,
Sure.
the idea is you can get all of that with one partner.
Sure.
So yeah.
So among the various sectors that you're present in right now, where are you seeing the maximum action? Because there was a lot of talk, and there is still, or that buzz, that funding has dried up in e-commerce. Is that really something that you're seeing on the ground from all the other spaces that you've gotten into in your presence in Coimbatore, whether it's the textile industry or the food processing business? Are you seeing changes? Are you seeing evolution, more of an uptick in the SME activity there?
Absolutely. There's a lot of uptake in the SME activities in e-commerce space. People say that they have dried out, but there are still players in the market who have got the funding and are willing to go all the way.
Right.
Similarly, there are a lot of manufacturing outlets, a lot of retail outlets. They are now beginning to see an upside to their business and are believing that the business will take over.
So actually, just to come in there, over the last, I would say there has been a slight change. It is tougher to get funded today than it was maybe a couple of years ago.
Yes.
But there is an uptake in different types of funds, right? Debt has become so much more streamlined. You hear about fintech companies really dominating the market today, which is so important. So yes, it is harder to fundraise, but if you've got a solid business, there is money out there for everyone, obviously.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess it's just a little more picky in terms of.
But I find it surprising, Mihir, that at this point in time, you started in 2012.
Yeah.
In 2016, right now in August, you're still bootstrapping.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what does that say about your own business? Because that is going to be a reflection of what we are seeing in the market out there for the SME business at large.
You really turned that on me. No, absolutely. I think the thing about us is we're a services business at the end of the day, and the idea was very simple. We're not e-commerce. We're not going to go from 0 to 100, in a few months.
Sure.
We wanted to build a solid cash flow services business, and I think we've done that. We wanted to build a model where our customers are our investors, and we're at that stage. So where we are today is of course, we've built that business. We've got a decent enough customer base. We are going to look to fundraise towards the end of the year. The idea is, to kind of move into a pan-India role, actually set up offices, do it the right way, right? Also from the future, right? I mean, I think 8 to 10 years from now, there are probably going to be no accountants.
Right.
It's going to move to artificial intelligence. It's going to move to technology. 50 to 60% of our costs, or any accounting and finance company's costs, comes from data entry work, manual work, which can be automated, right? So we obviously...
So if automation is the way to go, then why do you need so much presence geographically across India right now? If you think that that is the future, then would you rather invest in technology to make sure that, all your clients are able to access whatever you're offering online?
I think we're just a little far away from that. And as Indians, we love our touch and feel, right? Especially with something like accounting. It's so trust-driven. You want to see...
You want to put a face to it.
To a certain extent, yeah. I mean, a lot of companies across Europe and the US have built pure software solutions. But you've got to customize that to the region you're working in. So I think there's going to be an angle of the people element and adding technology as a layer over that.
Right. Also, B2B business versus B2C business. You're obviously in the B2B business yourself, but when you look at the larger SME space, do you find that taking more traction than the B2C right now?
You want to take that?
Would that be an assessment?
That wouldn't be... Yeah, we are going to eventually concentrate on the B2C business as well. Right now, as you rightly mentioned, we are concentrating more on the B2B business because that being our bread and butter. But yes, we will eventually get into the B2C space.
So which is that point of inflection that you're looking at right now? Because obviously we're in a process of change, and obviously there is so much more that can be achieved. SMEs is what everyone's talking about right now. You're seeing the number of startups as well. But what is going to be that crucial point of inflection?
I think there's a lot of things with respect to the law in terms of taxation, in terms of, we've seen that, right, with the GST, which on the ground yet has to, yeah, but it's going to take a few months to actually have an effect on the ground. But we're obviously very bullish that manufacturing is going to see a revival, exports is going to see a larger revival. And we're seeing that when we talk to promoters of these companies, they're super excited about that. So I think the SME market is definitely at an inflection point with respect to, one, from a government regulatory perspective, and two, access to capital with these fintech companies, as we mentioned.
But do you think GST can be a good thing? Because right now, initially, one hears that there's a definite hit that they're going to take, right? Considering that SMEs didn't have to pay excise duty until their turnover was more than 1.5 crore rupees. This obviously changes a lot of things on the ground. Does that kind of shrink your business, expand it? What does it do for you?
Actually, it will expand our business because when GST hits through...
Compliance.
Correct. Compliance hits. Everyone will be in need of knowledge, how to go about doing their work. How can this change be made more smoother?
Right. So tech processes as well will come to play.
Yeah. And primarily GST has been labeled as standardizing things across India geography. And I mean, I think that would be real welcome for all the businesses.
Right. You see that happening?
I mean, not very actively yet, but it's obviously going to pick up towards the end of third and fourth quarter.
Correct. So is there a common thread that you find among your clientele in terms of the offerings that you have? Also, I'm kind of going back to the kind of sectors that you're servicing right now. Do you find a lot of difference, or is there a certain common thread of services that all of these SMEs require? Or something really stands out by way of, say, a food processing business or education, even healthcare? Are there specific strains that you pick up as well that you need to kind of design your products differently for?
Absolutely.
Give me an example.
Like, just for example, I mean, e-commerce, the pain point is always reconciliation, right? I mean, it's less about accounting because you can automate that through software, but it's about creating a maker-checker system, ensuring you've got multiple payment gateways, which transaction, what revenue shouldn't I record? So that's kind of a sector-specific issue. But with respect to what they're buying, 80 to 85% of our customers is where we actually run the entire function. So from ground up, all they do is make data available to us, and we go in or either work remotely through the cloud and run that operation for them.
So give me a typical profile of, because the rural market, have you been able to tap into that a lot when you talk about the SME space? Are you looking at that even? Or are they coming from a certain, what is the typical profile that you're aiming for?
Sure. So, I mean, for us, our sweet spot is funded startups. So anywhere from a pre-series A round onwards, as well as family businesses, anywhere between a 25 to 75 crore top line. That's kind of where our value kicks in, right? You can get a lot of people to do your accounts today, and accounts isn't the problem. The idea is, what do I do with that data? So our value really at that point is helping them validate their business hypothesis through their accounting numbers, right? And we're huge lean startup fans, right? So everyone's trying to close that build, measure, learn loop on their business, and we think there's actually a chapter on innovation accounting in that book, right? We think that's so powerful, and that's kind of what we're trying to drive through with them.
So this is interesting as far as what you've been able to achieve, and obviously what more you need to do. And like I was reading, this is about someone mentioning, this was Jaspreet Bindra, Senior Vice President at Mahindra & Mahindra, who says the good thing about SMEs is that they think like a consumer, but they pay like a business. Is this true?
Well, yes. I mean...
And how does that reflect on your margins? Tell me how this actually translates.
So obviously, they're definitely good paymasters in a way, but of course it's a much harder negotiation. Startups are slightly easier to negotiate because, for starters, they're wearing chappals when you're in their office. But yeah, I think we typically operate anywhere between a 50 to 55% gross margin,
right.
And because we're a services business, we maintain that client on client,
sure.
which is relatively powerful, right? And the idea is now, how do we scale that rapidly?
Correct.
Which is at the inflection point we are at our business, and as I mentioned, a few months down the line, we're going to hopefully fundraise.
I find it interesting that you're working on your own scalability even as you're helping your clients do the exact same thing.
Absolutely.
It's a great space to be, and I wish you great luck going ahead on this. Mihir, Zoeb, pleasure having you in the studio
here. Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Good luck. So these are Rising Stars today, and of course we'll continue this journey of featuring many more in the future. But for the moment, from me, Vikram Oza, and the entire team working on the show, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great afternoon and happy Raksha Bandhan. Bye-bye.